Good morning. So, lots to learn about and feel into. And this morning, I want to feel into and articulate what self love is not. The recent incident with a former friend is teaching me new insights as I analyze the exchange further. And there is an aspect in our wounded self, in our ego, that can be mistaken for self-love. And that is when we how shall I say this now? I'm going to try and get under the layers. For instance, when our wounded ego stands up for itself and defends itself, that is not an act of self-love for the subconscious. Boy, this is going to be hard to articulate, but everybody in the world is practicing that kind of quote-unquote self-love from their wounded ego and standing up for themselves. That does not qualify for the self-love that I'm talking about, that I practice. That's just self-defense of the left brain. And it's self-defense of the unconscious self. It's the unconscious self made conscious. That self has to be loved. And that self is loved, like I say, it has to be made conscious first through the dark night of the soul. The ego actually has to stand down to experience the wounding in the subconscious, to experience the triggers in the subconscious. The ego needs to stand down for us to be able to access that realm of the soul. The soul self is the one that needs the love and affirmation through surrendering. As we surrender, not fight for, but surrender to the pain, to the wounding, to the memory, and allow ourselves to feel that pain in the shadow of the valley, in the valley of the shadow of death, of ego death, right? We don't want to love the ego in its wounded state. We need to allow this process for ego to die, for the self-defense to die down, so that the wounds can come up into the conscious space where we can understand the wounds. And it's through that process where we have to gently love that wounded soul without going into a sword fight with another person in defense. This is an internal work that is just taking place within ourselves. It has nothing to do with the person outside of us, except that that person triggers us into ego response, right? And the ego response is not self-love. You're not even getting to the self part that matters here in this equation. You need to allow yourself to feel the pain without the backup and defense of ego covering over the pain. You need to feel the pain. You need to feel the misunderstanding within yourself, and then in your own 4 characters in your brain, you need to tend to the wounds, not defend the wounds, tend to the wounds. Feel into the feelings of rejection and abandonment. Feel into the humiliation. Feel into the ridicule. You've got to wrap your arms around those feelings about that part that is feeling so crushed. And you need to elevate that part, that crushed part, with love, compassion, and forgiveness for that self part. You're never going to get there while you remain on the battlefield clashing swords with other people, defending your right, defending your... That's not where it's at. You're going to continue to ride off the battlefield and just find another battle because of the battle that's going on the inside of you, the conflict between your soul and your ego. The conflict is between your soul and your ego, not your ego with another ego. I hope this makes sense. You're not loving yourself when you allow ego to run the show, when you allow ego to keep hiding the soul part. That only had its function for your survival. But you're not meant to live in mere survival, you're meant to thrive. And for that you have to heal yourself from the inside, independent of the people around you. You have to do this, right? So hopefully that made sense in articulating what self-love is not. Loving your ego and letting it have its way in its defensive reactions is not self-love. That's the wrong self in this case. Everybody in the world knows how to pamper that one. And that's not the transformative self-love that I am about.